Welcome back. We're looking at our scene tiles today, and this is just a basic one where we can just have a scene for our character to walk around in, and that's all it's going to be. So back in Unity, we have our player here. Let me just zoom out. I want a larger area to look at, and I'm going to look in our sprites. And we've got a bunch of sprites here. Like I said, I'll have all the links in the descriptions when I'm finished as to where I got all my assets from. And here we have these graphics. So we can see it's all tiles, and we've got a piece of grass, and we've got different variations of grass. We've got different flowers. Um, we've got different tiles that we can walk on. So there's a whole bunch of different things that we can use and just place down in our scene. It would be a big pain if I had to take each one as an object and place each object in my scene, get them perfectly line up with the scene. I can go in here and I can easily say, oh, well, this is 0.5 and that's 0.5. And then this would be 1.5 and 0.5. And that's just crazy. There's no way that you'd be able to get any scene done if that's the way you're doing it. So we're going to use something called our tile palette. And here we have it. I'm going to create a new palette. So picture this just as like a painter's palette where you can just dab onto any color and start painting with that color. So I'm going to create a new palette and I'll call this ground. Create. And I've created a folder for this called tile sets. Select. And I'm just going to take this entire graphic and drag it up here, and it's going to import each piece as a separate tile. Go to tile sets, select. Okay. The next I'm going to create is going to be stone. That's this stone ground. Let's create. Once again, we place it into our tile sets. And I just drag that into here. Tile sets, select. I have something called structure, which is going to be walls. There's two of them. Okay, structure and wall. So I'm going to create one for wall. Create wall. Drag that in there. Okay, that looks good. And I'm going to leave out the props for now. I just want to go straight to the trees. So create new trees. And that goes into our tile sets. Okay, before I do that, I want to analyze the trees. When you get this package, the trees are normally split into a lower and a top area, which I don't use my trees that way. So I deleted those slices. I created a separate slice for each tree, so it's one slice, and I have placed the pivot point where, if you think of a circle here as the base of the trunk, I've got that in the center of the circle for the base. And I did that for each tree, placing the pivot point at the base. I don't need the bushes. I'm just going to use the trees for now. So let's just get down here to the trees. And I'm going to select all the trees, go back to my tile palette. Now, our tile palette is supposed to be square tiles, but these aren't square pieces. So when I drag these in, you're going to see that, select folder, it's gonna make these more vertical. They still play fine when you're using a rectangular, a square tile area. It's just the center of them has to be in the center. That's why I have the pivot point placed there. Plus, there are other reasons on why I placed the pivot point in that area. Now, let's take a look at how we can start painting in our scene with tiles. I need to create an area to paint on, and I want a 2D object, tile map, and rectangular. And now we can see this grid that's popped up. We want to, oh, let's just rename it. So we're going to call it ground. And I want to get my ground. And I'm just going to take one brush for now. And I've got the brush selected. So now you can see I can start to just paint with tiles. I'm going to use a rectangular brush just so I can get a large area in. And that's good. So I just have a huge expanse of that one pure green tile. Let's get some more variation in there. Let's get some of this grass tile going. But I want something random. And I could click on each one and just dot them in. But that'll take forever. We're using the system so that we can cut down on the amount of time we spend. So I'm going to switch from the default brush to a random brush. There used to be an asset called, which did special brushes and everything. And that asset allowed us to create a brush as an asset file. And I could do a random brush as an asset file. This one is not as good as that brush, I find, because each brush can be its own random brush. This one, I have to keep resetting up each and every single time. So how do we set this up? Well, we say pick random tile, and we've got, let's just make sure we're in the first tile. So I want to pick a random tile, and I want to add it to my random tiles, because right now there's 0 tiles. And let's just drag this over. And I'm just going to start picking random tiles. I want to grab some flowers too. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's grab those flowers. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's grab those and those. Okay. And now let's stop picking. All right. The brush I have now, I can see it's starting to select some random. Well, right now it's only choosing flower. Oh, let's go to brush. Right. So wherever I'm seeing random things popping up. So I can just start to paint this whole area. So I can just throw in all of this randomness. And there. I've got a nice little field now. I have to remember, if I want to start painting with other brushes, I have to switch back from random to default brush. There are quite a few brushes here. You can look into each of them and see what they do, but the default and the random brush are the two I use the most. Okay. Now we want to look at let's add some trees. I'm going to say 3D object, tile map, and rectangular. And I'm going to call these trees. And let's go to our tree palette. And I can start painting with the trees. Now, here's one of the things you have to look out for. You're going to be painting on this. So it says active tile map. I got trees selected, but it's not coming up here. Make sure you have trees selected as your active tile map. And when I come in here, I can start painting my trees. So I'm just going to paint few trees around. Okay. All right. I put this cluster of trees here to show something important. Right now, our trees are not rendering correctly. If I look at how this is set up, it says bottom left. It's starting at the bottom, creating our order of the trees as it goes up. So as it's going up, it created this tree, then it created this tree, and this tree is now on top, and then it created this tree, and this tree is on top. We don't want that. We want to select from the top down, and that looks better. We still have another problem though. Our trees and our player are going to be rendering incorrectly. So let's grab our player and let's pull her down here. And I want her behind the trees, not in front. So I'm just going to drag a tree in from here as an example, as an object. So let's put that tree here. Now the tree is rendering behind that layer. Why? Because of our order in layers. Let's set it to 1 so it's in front of the grass. And we'll set our player, who's had no problems yet. Our player's had no problems being behind the grass, but I want the player to also be render as 1. Here's where things get tricky. The player and the tree, yes, are on the same order in layer. And right now, she is on top of the tree, and I want her to go behind the tree, and when she's here, to be in front of the tree. How does it know who's in front and who's behind? Well, this is a 3D software. We're using it for a 2D game. In that, the Z direction, which goes into and out of the screen, is normally what controls who's in front and who's behind. But in this case, if I'm down here, I'm in front. If I'm up here, I'm behind. And that is our Y direction that controls who's in front and who's behind. We have to go into our project settings. We have to go to our graphics. And I'm going to switch this to custom axis. I'm just going to wait for it to update. It's a lot of updating. Okay, and this is where we set it up. I need Y as 1 and Z as 0, because we're using the Y axis for our sorting. And we can get out of there now. Okay, now you're saying, but it's still not working. Watch what happens when this happens. So once I get to a certain point, I am behind the tree there. But so what's happening here is the fact that I am using the center to sort my character and the tree. If I set this to use the pivot point on both that and the tree, now when I select her, she's in front of the tree, and as soon as my pivot point goes beyond the tree's pivot point, she's now behind the tree. That's why I set the pivot point of the tree at the base of the tree, and her pivot point at the base of her feet. Okay, so this works great, but that's if the tree is only as an object. What about these trees? So if I take my character and I move it here, still no good. That's because, right, let's set these trees to order 1 and try it again. So still no good. Nothing's working properly. If I go up here, I'm behind, but somewhere down here. So what's happening here is the fact that with the trees, we are looking at all of the trees as one big chunk. And the center of that chunk is what we're looking at. I want to switch this that every tree is looked at individually. Now if I take my player, I'm behind that tree, I'm in front, behind. I can come to these trees and I can be in front of a tree. See if I can see that. It's kind of hard to see. I am, there we see, her hat is in front of that tree, but she's behind this tree. So it gives a nice sort of depth to our scene. Okay, that is our sorting of our layers to get things to look more realistic. And the last thing I want to show, I'm not going to go into making any structures or anything, but when our characters walk around, our character can walk behind and in front and also through the trees. So we need some sort of collider because she has a collider on her feet. We need a collider on the trees. We're going to be using a let's see, terrain collider. No, tile map collider. Right. Okay. So this tile map collider, it's going to create around each object a polygon collider, and this is not good because I don't want to hit the side of the tree. I want to be able to walk behind the tree. I only need a collider at the base of the tree. So let's get rid of this. I'll be bringing it back, don't worry. But let's go to our original image. And in here, let's select this tree. I'm going to switch it from looking at the sprite. And I want to look at making a custom physics shape. This is our collider. So if I draw that, there's my shape. Those are my points. And I can just put that at the base of the tree. So you can make it as detailed as you want. It doesn't have to be that detailed. A box would work. Oops. And that should be good. These snapped pixels. I mean, I could just make it rounder if I wanted. Like I said, your decision. There we go. All right, that's one tree. The rest of the trees, I'll just do simple boxes on. So, box, and you get box. Apply. Okay, now when we go and use the same tile collider, tile map collider, it's going to find that those objects already have colliders on them. And it's using those colliders for our scene. Once again, let us give it a test. And here she's walking, and I'm behind a tree, I'm in front of a tree, but can I pass through the tree? No. There's a collider stopping me from walking through the tree. And I can go, there's a bunch of trees here, and I can walk in between their trunks and between the trees for a nice effect. All right, that is some basics on our tile map system. It can get a lot more complex. I can create something called a rule tile, and a rule tile basically allows me to draw, for instance, if I wanted a pathway to wind around the trees, I need corners, I need vertical parts, I need horizontal parts, and a rule tile will allow me to draw it, and it will look at all of the adjacent tiles, all the adjacent areas around the tile to pick the correct image for the tile. That's a little bit more complex. I can do a more advanced video on that another time. But the last thing I want to show, and this has to do with our virtual camera, our cinema machine, is I'm going to create an empty game object, and I'm going to call it camera bounds. And let's just reset this. I'm going to add a polygon collider to it, which I'll just set to trigger. I'm going to put this up here. And I'm going to get rid of that up there, get rid of that. I just want a box. Put this down here. Put this down here. And this is a nice thing I like about this, is that if I hit play, my camera is going to follow the player, and the player is going to want to walk to the edge of the area. So I walk up here, and I get to see that ugly background. All right. I don't want to see the ugly background. I could turn on an edge collider around here to stop the player from walking through. That's not what I want to do today. I want to grab this, and I'm going to add an extension to it. And this is called Cinema Machine Confiner 2D. And it's asking for a shape with a collider on it. And now, when I hit play, walking up to the edge, the camera stops at the edge. The player can walk off the edge, that's why you want to put colliders to stop the player, but it means I never see that ugly stuff again. This is one of the other benefits of having the Cinema Machine camera on. If I just linked the camera to the player, when the player starts moving, the camera starts moving. When the player stops, the camera stops. This is smooth. And if the player moved all the way over, the camera would keep moving with the player. I love Cinema Machine. It saves a lot of coding, having to code my own camera system. That is going to be it for our section on animation. And the next one, on scene tiles. And the next one will be laying some objects around in the scene, some items that we can pick up. And that shouldn't be too long of a video. I'll see how long it is to see if I'll include the basic inventory after that. But that is it for now, and I'll see you next time.